Are you sure you know when a trophy walleye feeds in January? I mean, really sure? What if I told you that the two most popular times to fish, dawn and dusk, are often a complete waste of time in the dead of winter? It sounds crazy, I know. It goes against everything the old-timers and the fishing magazines have taught us. But today, we're going to expose a hard truth. I'm going to show you the specific, often ignored window of time when the biggest, smartest walleye in the lake are actually looking for a meal. The reason you're not getting bites might have nothing to do with your lure or your location. It might be your clock. So let me ask you this. Do you believe there's a magic hour for January walleye? Let's see if you still think so in about 20 minutes. For generations, the gospel of fishing has been simple. Be on the water before the sun comes up and stay until it goes down. This is the golden hour rule. We've all followed it. We set our alarms for 4 in the morning, chug coffee in the dark and shiver on the ice, all because we believe that low light equals active fish. And for most of the year, that's absolutely correct. In spring, summer and fall, walleye use the cover of darkness to ambush prey. It's a reliable pattern. The problem is, we take that logic and apply it to the most extreme month of the year, January. We keep doing the same thing, year after year, freezing our fingers off for a few small fish while the giants remain elusive. We blame the weather, the barometric pressure, or bad luck. But we never question the most fundamental variable of all, the timing. Let's start by putting the classic dawn bite on trial. Picture it. It's 6 in the morning. The ice is cracking in the bitter cold. You're filled with that familiar mix of hope and frozen toes. You believe this is when it's all going to happen. But think about what's happening under the ice. After a long, dark and brutally cold night, the water temperature is at its absolute minimum. The dissolved oxygen levels might be lower. Everything is still, stagnant and lethargic. A big old walleye isn't an energetic teenager. It's a master of energy conservation. Its metabolism has slowed to a crawl. The last thing on its mind is aggressively chasing down a meal. It's in a state of semi-torpor, waiting for the world to give it a reason to move. Your frantic jigging at 6 a.m. is like trying to have a loud conversation with someone who is deep asleep. You're there, but they aren't listening. Now, let's consider the fish's perspective. That trophy walleye has a very simple internal calculator. It constantly weighs energy spent versus energy gained. In the warmth of summer, a short fast chase for a big shad is a great deal. It spends 100 calories to gain 500. But in January, the equation is flipped. Its body is stiff. Its movements are sluggish. Chasing a lure, even for a short distance, costs a massive amount of precious energy. The potential meal has to be an overwhelmingly good deal. The fish knows that a random, energetic feeding spree at the coldest part of the day is a bad survival strategy. So while you're sitting up there, convinced you're in the right place at the right time, the fish you're targeting is doing the biological equivalent of pulling the covers over its head and hitting the snooze button. It's waiting for a better offer. Let's move on to the evening bite. This is the second pillar of traditional fishing wisdom. The sun starts to set, the light fades, and we expect the dinner bell to ring. Again, this works wonders in October. But in January, the evening bite is a trap for a similar reason as the morning one. As the sun disappears, what little warmth it provided is instantly gone. The temperature begins to plummet rapidly. Any small amount of activity that might have been stirred up during the day is now shutting down hard. The bait fish, the tiny minnows and perch, are seeking cover and becoming inactive. So what does the trophy walleye do? It follows suit. It understands that hunting in rapidly dropping temperatures is another bad investment of energy. It's time to settle in for the long, cold night, not go on a rampage. Think of it like this. Imagine you're in a survival situation in the Arctic. You have limited food and fuel. Would you go out hunting for food at 3 in the morning when it's coldest and you can't see? Or would you venture out during the warmest, brightest part of the day when you can see your prey and your body isn't fighting the absolute worst of the cold? The answer is obvious. You'd wait for the peak conditions, however slight they may be. A trophy walleye is a survivor. It has lived for 10, maybe 15 years by making smart decisions. Wasting energy on a low percentage hunt at dusk in January is not a smart decision. It's a rookie mistake, and that fish is no rookie. It will find a piece of structure, hunker down, and wait. So if it's not the morning and it's not the evening, what's left? The answer is so simple it's almost insulting. It's the middle of the day. Yes, that bright, sunny, boring period from around 11 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon that most anglers write off. This is where the old rules get shattered. We've been taught that bright sun and clear skies are bad for walleye fishing, especially in shallow water. And in open water, that's often true. But under a blanket of ice and snow, the game changes completely. That harsh overhead sun is no longer a threat. In fact, it's a trigger. It's the one event all day that injects a tiny bit of energy into an otherwise frozen, static ecosystem. And that tiny bit of energy is everything. Let's break down what's happening during this midday window. First, solar radiation. Even through a foot of ice and a layer of snow, some sunlight penetrates the water. This has a microscopic but critical effect. It can raise the water temperature by a fraction of a degree in the upper water column. It might not seem like much to us, but to a cold-blooded creature whose entire world is dictated by temperature, it's like a whisper of springtime. This tiny shift is enough to signal that conditions are at their daily peak. It's a subtle cue that now is the most efficient time to expend a little bit of energy. It's the closest thing to a comfortable environment the fish will experience all day, and they respond to it. The second, and perhaps more important factor, is the bait. The entire underwater food chain responds to this midday energy spike. Microscopic zooplankton and phytoplankton may become slightly more active in the increased light. This, in turn, gets the smallest minnows and baitfish moving. They might rise a few inches in the water column or move out from cover to feed. They feel that tiny temperature change and become just a little bit bolder. And when the baitfish start moving, what do you think the predators do? The walleye, which has been dormant all morning, senses this subtle shift. Its prey is now moving, visible, and slightly more vulnerable. The energy spent versus energy gained calculation suddenly starts to look a lot more favorable. This is not a feeding frenzy. Let's be very clear about that. You won't see fish aggressively smashing lures. The January midday bite is often incredibly subtle. It's a slow, deliberate process. The walleye will slowly cruise, using its exceptional eyesight to spot a meal that requires minimal effort. It's looking for an easy opportunity. It might see a perch just sitting there, slightly disoriented, and simply inhale it. It's not a chase. It's an ambush from a slow-moving platform. This is why many anglers miss it. They are still fishing aggressively, with fast jigging motions, trying to trigger a reaction strike that the fish is simply not willing to give. They are using summer tactics in a winter world. The fish is there, it's willing to eat, but you're not speaking its language. Now let's talk about a real-world scenario. You've been on the ice since dawn. It's 10:30 in the morning. You're cold, you're bored, and you haven't had a single bite. You start thinking about packing it in and going home for a warm lunch. Your buddy says, "Let's give it another hour." You reluctantly agree. You slow your presentation way down. You switch to a small jig tipped with a minnow head and just let it sit there, barely quivering it every minute or so. Suddenly, at 11:15, you feel a spongy weight on the end of your line. No aggressive thump. Just a heavy feeling. You set the hook and the rod doubles over. It's the giant you've been waiting for. This wasn't luck. You just stumbled into the real feeding window. This midday pattern is most pronounced on those classic winter days, cold, clear, and sunny. The high-pressure systems that bring these beautiful, calm days are often seen as tough for fishing, but in reality, they create the perfect conditions for this specific pattern to emerge. The stable weather allows that solar energy to have its maximum effect. On cloudy, overcast days, the effect is more muted. The feeding window might be wider and less defined because there is no distinct peak in solar energy. On those days, the dawn and dusk bites might actually be slightly better, but they still won't be as reliable as the midday bite on a bluebird day. Understanding the weather is key to pinpointing the exact timing. So what does this mean for your strategy? It means you can sleep in. It means you can have a hot breakfast and arrive at the lake around 10 a.m., fresh and ready to fish. While everyone else is leaving, frustrated and cold from a fishless morning, you are just getting started. You can focus your effort, your energy, and your concentration on the 3-hour period from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. This is about fishing smarter, not harder. Instead of a grueling 8-hour day with a low probability of success, you are targeting a high probability 3-hour window. This completely changes the game. It makes winter fishing less of an endurance test and more of a strategic strike. Let's re-examine the senses of the walleye. Their greatest asset is their eyesight, specifically designed for low light conditions. This is why the dawn and dusk theory is so popular. But under a thick sheet of ice, especially with snow cover, it's always a low light environment. The difference in light levels between 6 a.m. and noon is not nearly as dramatic as it is in open water, so the low light advantage is a constant, not a trigger. The real trigger, as we've established, is the subtle increase in water temperature and bait fish activity caused by the midday sun. The walleye is using its other senses, like its lateral line, to detect the slight movements of nearby prey that have been stirred by this energy spike. It's a full sensory experience, not just a visual one. Think about the biggest walleye you've ever caught through the ice. Be honest with yourself. What time of day was it? For many experienced anglers, if they really think about it, their personal best fish often came during these off hours. They might have dismissed it as a fluke, a random lucky bite. But was it really? Or was it a pattern that they just didn't recognize at the time? I've talked to dozens of old-timers who, after some prodding, will admit with a grin, "You know, the biggest one I ever pulled through the ice hit right after my lunch sandwich." It's not a coincidence. It's the system working exactly as it should. The biggest, wisest fish are feeding when conditions are most optimal for them, not when it's most convenient for us. This midday theory also explains why certain locations produce better than others in January. A spot that might be a community hole in the fall can be a dead zone in the winter. The best January spots often have something to do with maximizing that midday sun. For example, a shallow, dark-bottom bay will warm up a fraction of a degree more than a deep rocky bottom. This subtle difference can concentrate baitfish, and in turn concentrate the walleye. Or consider a spot on the north shore of the lake that gets the most direct sunlight throughout the day. These are the kinds of details that separate the consistently successful winter anglers from the rest. They aren't just fishing spots. They're fishing for tiny temperature advantages. Let's debunk another related myth. The idea that you have to fish deep for winter walleye. While they often hold in deeper water overnight and in the early morning, this midday feeding window can bring them surprisingly shallow. As the bait fish move up to take advantage of the slightly warmer, more oxygenated water near the ice, the big walleye will follow. It's not uncommon to find them in 10 to 15 feet of water, right under your feet, during this midday period. People drilling holes over 30 or 40 feet of water are often fishing below the action. The fish have come upstairs for lunch, and you're still ringing the doorbell in the basement. It's about being in the right part of the water column at the right time. So, how do you adapt your presentation for this specific bite? You have to slow down, way down. This is not the time for aggressive rip jigging or flashy, noisy lures. Remember, the fish is trying to get a meal with the least possible effort. Your best bet is often a dead stick approach. This means using a second rod with a live minnow hooked lightly under the dorsal fin, suspended just off the bottom. Let it sit there. The minnow's natural struggles are all the action you need. On your main jigging rod, use something small and subtle. A small tungsten jig with a plastic or a minnow head. Your jigging motion should be more of a gentle lift, a pause, and a slow fall. 90% of your time should be spent pausing. The bites themselves will be different. Don't expect that classic walleye thump you get in the fall. In January, the bite is often just a slight pressure, a mushy feeling, or you'll simply see your line go slack as the fish swims upwards after inhaling the lure. You need to be a line watcher. Pay intense attention. If anything feels different, heavier, lighter, or just weird, set the hook. It's a game of subtlety. The fish are not in a mood to be aggressive, so their bites won't be aggressive either. Many anglers miss these fish completely because they're waiting for a signal that the fish is simply not going to give them. It's a finesse game, not a power game. The brutes are behaving with surprising delicacy. Let's think about the psychology of the angler. We are creatures of habit. We go to the same spots, use the same lures, and fish at the same times, because it has worked for us in the past. It's comfortable. The idea of completely changing our schedule and fishing during a time we've always considered unproductive feels wrong. It takes a leap of faith. But the fishermen who consistently catch trophy fish are the ones who are willing to experiment and question the conventional wisdom. They treat every day on the water as a puzzle to be solved, not a routine to be followed. This isn't just about changing your fishing time, it's about changing your mindset from a follower to a problem solver. This doesn't mean you will never catch a walleye at dawn or dusk in January. Of course you will. There are always exceptions to the rule. A major weather front moving in can trigger a bite at any time. But we're not talking about exceptions. We are talking about probabilities. We are talking about putting the odds in your favor. If you have limited time to be on the ice, why would you spend it fishing during a low probability window? Your goal is to be actively fishing, with maximum focus, during the highest probability window. And in the dead of winter, on a stable, cold day, that window is almost always in the middle of the day. It's a simple, powerful shift in strategy that can turn a frustrating season into a successful one. So, the next time you plan a trip in January, try this experiment. Forget the 4 a.m. alarm clock. Show up at the lake at 10. Find a promising spot, maybe a shallow flat adjacent to deep water. Drill your holes, get your gear set, and be ready by 11. Fish hard until 2 p.m. Use a slow, patient approach. Pay close attention to your line. I can't promise you'll catch a monster every time. That's fishing. But I can promise you that you will be fishing during the time when that monster is most likely to make a mistake. You are finally aligning your schedule with the fish's schedule. And when that happens, you are no longer just hoping to get lucky. You are making your own luck by understanding the world beneath the ice. So, there you have it. The biggest lie in winter walleye fishing is that the old rules still apply. We've broken it down. The dawn and dusk bites are low percentage plays in the brutal cold of January. The fish's metabolism is at rock bottom, and they are conserving every ounce of energy. The real magic hour, the Wote to Poverot moment, is that midday window, roughly from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. This is when the faint energy from the sun gives the entire aquatic system a tiny nudge, waking up the bait fish and triggering the big lethargic predators to look for an easy meal. This isn't just a theory, it's a pattern proven time and time again by those willing to break from tradition. It completely changes your approach. You can fish for a shorter, more comfortable, and dramatically more productive period of time. Thank you so much for watching and for being open to a new way of thinking. If this video gave you a new perspective, do me a favor and hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe for more content that challenges the status quo. Now, I want to hear from you. What is the most unconventional or wrong time of day that you've ever caught a true trophy fish? Drop your story in the comments below. Let's compare notes.